Charity Right Online, we're looking at the transformative elements of our Christian faith and how we are to think uniquely about them and let them transform our lifestyle. Many Christians, when they start to read the Bible for themselves, read Matthew's Gospel because it comes at the beginning of the New Testament. Now, Matthew's Gospel is long, is doing an awful lot of things all at one go, and moving through many different themes, but it's held together front and back by the introduction of Jesus as the Emmanuel at the beginning of chapter 1, and then by the Great Commission at the end of chapter 28. In chapter 1, Jesus is to be born, and his name is to be Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins, and he will fulfill the prophecy of Isaiah, which says that the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and his name will be Emmanuel, which means God with us. And at the end of the Gospel, the risen Jesus, addressing his disciples, says, "Lo, I am with you always, even to the close of the age." So within that we have this extraordinary revelation of who Jesus is, who Jesus was and is. And we have sometimes called this last short paragraph of Matthew the Great Commission, because the risen Jesus says to his followers, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And look, I am with you always to the close of the age." There's the Emmanuel promise, but now it has been transformed into this vessel of Jesus' authority. All authority has been given to him in heaven and on earth. I've often thought we Western Christians are quite used to thinking of Jesus having all authority in heaven. We're not so good at thinking what it might mean to say that he has all authority on earth as well. But Jesus is there echoing particularly two passages, actually. Daniel chapter 7, where the Son of Man, or one like a Son of Man, is exalted to have dominion over the four beasts who have been sent packing, the powers of darkness and evil that have ravaged God's world. And the Son of Man ascends and is seated at the right hand of the Ancient of Days, and to him is given authority and dominion and power, that all peoples and nations and languages should serve him. And then at the end of the book of Chronicles, where Cyrus the Persian says, "I have all authority, now I'm commissioning the Jewish people to go and build the temple," it's as though Matthew is saying, it's like that, only much, much more so. Jesus is the reality. Cyrus was, in a sense, a parody of that coming reality. Jesus has all authority. But what does that look like? Well, in our world, if somebody is in charge, they will send in the police and enforce their will. Or in international relations, God help us, they will send in the tanks and enforce their will. But that's not the way of the Sermon on the Mount, and that's not the way of the Great Commission. Jesus' way of getting things done is that his worldwide sovereignty is put into action through the Sermon on the Mount, through the people who are called to be peacemakers, pure in heart, the people who are called to be hungry for justice, who are called to have a vision of God's goodness, reaching out even to those who don't think about God or who even hate him. And Jesus' example in his own public career of healing, of feasting with sinners, points the way. Go into all the world and make disciples. How did Jesus do it? That's how you should do it too. This is the inauguration of a new world, making disciples. Of course, this involves announcing that Jesus is Lord. When people see Jesus' followers doing these strange things like healing and celebrating and feasting in all the sort of unlikely places and ways, they will say, "Why are you doing this?" And the answer is, we're following this man called Jesus, who went around healing people and bringing new life where there was no hope, and so on. So the emphasis is the making of disciples who are learners. Disciples means learners, learning the Jesus way of living, learning the Jesus way of making God's kingdom happen. And in the course of that, baptizing them. As they discover who Jesus is, then they are baptized in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, bringing the whole truth of who God is and the whole truth of what happened to Jesus, his death and resurrection, into reality in their lives. And as they then meet with their fellow disciples into a community which is shaped according to that belief, the belief in the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, the belief that through the death and resurrection of Jesus, God's new world has been born, and that he himself is present with them, Emmanuel. How does that fit with what we in the Western churches have thought of in terms of evangelism? Well, mission and the commission to that mission is the larger reality of which evangelism is one sharp focus. Mission means doing anything and everything that the Spirit directs us to do, which is about bringing the new life of God, the new creation, into reality in God's world. That might mean running food banks. It might mean going entirely without hope. It is that we're almost, if not entirely, without hope. But in the middle of it, there will also be, and this is sometimes the specific vocation of some people who seem, as we say, specially called or specially cut out by God for this task, to tell people explicitly about Jesus, to introduce Jesus to them as one introduces a dear friend. So mission is the whole work of new creation. Evangelism is one sharp focus of that. Of course, it means announcing Jesus not just as friend, but as master and Lord. He is the one to whom all authority is given. That is the paradox at the heart of knowing Jesus, that he is both sovereign and that he is our friend. You see this again and again. If you find that difficult to imagine, read Matthew's Gospel and watch Jesus as sovereign teacher, as master, as the one who confronts the powerful and the bullies with the message that God has a different way of doing things, but the one who at the same time is gentle and meek, and as he says, lowly in heart, and if you follow him, you'll find rest for your whole lives. So in the power of the Spirit, evangelism means summoning people to worship Jesus as Lord, to get to know him as friend, to follow him, but thereby to become part of the much larger Great Commission, which varies according to context and culture and all sorts of different things. So evangelism fits into the Great Commission, but the Great Commission is wider, reflecting Matthew's overall vision of the Sermon on the Mount, constituting a people through whom the world becomes a different place, and knowing Jesus as the Emmanuel at the heart of that world.